You are watching the New American Media. Live from the Milky Way galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, the United States of America, California, Los Angeles to be specific. Hello everybody. Welcome to Agree to Disagree here on the newamericanmedia.com. You're listening to a new version of a song, Metro, by Sean Flynn and Johnny Rabb. Something the three of us have been working on for a while, with special thanks to my brother Chris Engelman for mixing this particular version down. Johnny's one of the best drummers on the planet, as was Sean. But we'll post this and you can check it out later. For now, we want to thank you for joining us on this program. And we have a special guest, so we're not going to mess around too much. I will just say, if you are following us after the fact, please do us a favor. Can you follow us on Twitter at American_media_? Go to our homepage, thenewamericanmedia.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia. And then like our Facebook page, The New American Media. So, we have a special guest that's going to be joining us now. This man is the Saturday night host of Coast to Coast AM. His name is John B. Wells. Let's get him in.
Hello.
Hello, John. It's Brian with the New American Media. You are live on the air. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
Can't complain. Living the dream, I suppose.
Oh, yes.
It has been a while since you have graced us with your presence. How have things been in the past few months for you?
Well, things have been pretty well as I just observe the unfolding drama and unending gullibility of the American people, if that gives you any idea. It's enough to keep you jacked up every day of your life, but I'm not going to allow that because it doesn't make for clear thinking.
But being on high alert is never too bad of a thing.
No, I think probably now more than ever, people should be aware and alert at all times. There's just it's interesting. All you have to do is just look at these random little aberrations of behavior here and there, and it gets reported in the news media, and it seems almost as though the behavior goes viral along with the story.
Now, you could be talking about any number of things, from the guy that pushes the man in the subway in New York. That was horrible. And all we want to talk about is a photo. It's interesting how we lose sight of the big picture. Benghazi, except that, no, it's a YouTube video. We're losing the conversation.
I don't know how you feel about that YouTube video, but I thought that thing was absolutely so stupid. I mean, just so completely stupid, complete with horrible effects, that it looked like some sort of a government cartoon.
Very interestingly phrased, almost like duck and cover in case of nuclear war.
Yeah, then when it's over, just come out and start cleaning up, right?
Yeah, no big deal. No big deal. No, but it's interesting because we laugh about it, and I've heard you say on Coast to Coast many times where something to the effect of, well, if I don't laugh, I'm going to cry, because that guy has been arrested. I'm sure it was on a totally unrelated thing that he did for passing bad checks, but he spoke out against something, and the First Amendment rights that he had were shut down. Yes, he was a bad filmmaker. Yes, he was a goofball. But should he be in jail? I mean, he got taken out. He's no longer among the populace.
Well, in my usual state of suspiciousness, I suspect that Lee Harvey Oswald was all prepped and ready for his close-up by the time this event occurred. I don't, Brian, if you don't mind, let me just read something, very, very short little piece that'll sort of set the tone.
Sure.
I bought this book, ordered from, the usual online source, and paid $50 for it. And it's because I am seeing a trend. Let's see if you see it too. I bet you do. I'll leave the proper name out for just a moment. Speeches are weapons, as much a part of a strategy of conquest as more direct instruments of warfare. A past master at throwing up verbal smokescreens to conceal his intended moves, knowing equally well the effectiveness of massive oratorical assaults that shake the nerves of his victims or opponents and break down their resistance, knowing how to give pledges that will be broken later, but will serve temporarily to divide and confuse and to create the illusion of security, using insults and lies in the same manner as generals use F-14s and tanks to break through the respectable but often weak front of his adversaries, contradicts himself constantly, but his contradictions often produce the effect of a psychological pincer movement which crushes the best defenses of logic and ordinary morality. I am quoting Raoul de Roussé, Dessalles, in Hitler's second book, My New Order.
Wow.
And he is speaking of Adolf Hitler. Now, if someone were to say to me, are you comparing our present administration's leader to Adolf Hitler? And I would say no. Adolf Hitler was trying to build up his country. So, how's that for throwing a little fuel on the campfire just to liven things up a little bit? What I am seeing is classical Nazi propaganda. The Jews, which were the scapegoat of that particular person's initiative, it's really very much the same as the scapegoat we have now, the rich. The rich, the rich, the rich. Not the successful, not the productive, the rich. Because to suggest that someone is rich, whatever that actually means, I think it means has more money than you do. They are the target. They must have achieved this through some nefarious means, and I think it's really sad. And I don't think people are aware. And you know, I can say things with you that I'm not sure that I could say these things on Coast to Coast AM. I could, but yeah, I can say them without saying them. I can allude to them, and sometimes if I get sufficiently rolling, I'll just say, to hell with it. I'll just let it out.
Well, see, let me say this, John, because I think that's what some of our conversation this past week was about when Bob Costas went political. It's interesting that you phrase it that way, because there are different conversations for different audiences at different times. I'll say something different at a bachelor party than at a wedding reception giving a speech. I'll speak differently in front of one group than another. But I think mainly the information I have to speak with is usually about the same. But Bob Costas this week kind of crossed a line. A lot of sports fans don't want to get into politics. I do. That's one of the main things I do. I guess let's shift gears to that then, because you kind of led me here as far as speaking in different audiences and different company. What did you think of what Bob Costas did, and what do you think about the content of what he had to say, if you followed that story at all?
Well, beginning with the look on his face that was suffused with, I'm going to go ahead and say this, even though I know that some people are going to be offended. First of all, let's take a look at who Bob Costas is. Does he have a varsity jacket with a letter on it? No. Has he ever played college sports? No. Has he ever played professional sports? No. So what is he? Nothing but a commentator about sports. Sports, particularly the NFL. And, keep in mind, I was hired twice to do an NFL highlight reel for the Dallas Cowboys when they had done their consecutive Super Bowl victories. So I'm not trying to alienate them. He does not speak for the entire NFL any more than I speak or you speak for the entire, mass media.
Right.
However, the NFL, with some exceptions, has become our criminals against their criminals. I mean, the Dallas Cowboys are absolutely rife with problems, drug problems, crashing in the back of a van. I can't remember now if somebody was killed or not, but if they weren't, they came within an inch of being killed. And so for this idiot, Bob Costas, to come on the air and suggest that it's impossible for young men in their 20s, all jacked up on whatever they're jacked up on to get themselves in shape, with the money, no guidance, no financial counselors, no hand-holding, you take people who in 90% of the cases would be almost completely unemployable unless they were in professional sports, and you turn them loose with a lot of money, they need some guidance. But that aside, There is such a thing as personal responsibility. And for Costas to suggest that men in that age group, that it's just inevitable there's going to be some kind of gun violence, is absolutely ludicrous. But what's more ludicrous, Brian, is that there are some people out there in the audience who agree with him. And worse, they have a voter registration card. Not that they need one, necessarily. So I probably sound like a bitter older guy, and I am a little bit.
Are
and
you
this
clinging,
Jason
John?
Whitlock.
Are you clinging to something, John?
You know, I'm not clinging to anything except this media has no sense, or they have all the privileges of saying whatever they want, and absolutely no sense of responsibility.
Ooh, that sounds a little bit like Wall Street or government, where you can socialize all of the losses and you can privatize all of the gains. But I guess we're getting a little off topic now, aren't we, John?
Well, maybe just a little bit, but the thing is that all of these roads lead to Rome. The culture that we have to look at as having the problem is not the gun culture or the money lenders and money traders culture. It's the overall culture of just get all you can while you can, and to hell with everybody else. You have yours.
Yeah, it's
so why would you care?
It's conquering a new land and then salting the earth so nothing else can happen there. You don't care. It's not the Native American way of think 7 generations ahead. We're borrowing this from them. We're not entitled to anything right now. And you know, when Bob Costas went out there and he kind of said, in his opinion, I think he was quoting Whitlock when Whitlock said the quasi-sane thing. I know we're splitting hairs over that, but when he said that if there weren't guns, they'd both be alive. Now, didn't this man Bob Costas work with O.J. Simpson? And I never saw Knives banned, and that's crossing the lines between violence and sports. Does anyone else see the irony of this?
Well, I've got some more irony to you. It's a slight side trip, if you don't mind taking one. It's short, and you just bring us back on topic. But there was a report on Fox News. I look at all of the networks, including MSNBC, for as long as I can stomach it, which isn't long usually.
Same here.
And just because the stuff they put out there is so vacuous and so easily traced, and the motives are so transparent, but other motives are transparent as well, although they do have a little more discretion. For example, on Fox News, I saw a report how, well, we see Henry Winkler advertising it, and I think they might have mentioned Robert, what's his name, the Natalie Wood, Robert Wagner, as doing commercials for reverse mortgages, and how, well, they're under scrutiny now because it will not be in your spouse's name, and should you die, your spouse will be thrown out. Now, they neglected to mention that Fred Thompson is the one on there, and it's beautiful, walking down a typical American street. I mean, it has everything except a giant slice of apple pie in the horizon. It even says 1942 on the address of the house, and there's an American flag there. And he says, if you own your own home, no, I don't own my own home. I own somebody else's home. I'm a slumlord. But anyway, if you own your own home, this may be a really effective financial tool. Well, they didn't mention Fred Thompson, but they did mention Winkler.
Right.
So, I mean, I think Fred's a pretty good guy. I mean, I've never really, his acting is not bad, and when he was making his run for the presidency, I thought the things that came out of his mouth were pretty good, and he's a pretty savvy politician. But he did have his 6 o'clock covered by Fox. So if you're not willing to splash it up on your own, if they're participating in something wrong, then as far as I'm concerned, your integrity is compromised along with your credibility.
Well, and you got to be careful what you endorse for that specific reason. And when a station that gets the bargained rights to carry NFL games wants to interject an anti-Second Amendment message at a time, don't forget, though, this is when George Zimmerman is suing NBC. This is during the week where I think Rachel Maddow, Al Sharpton, and Lawrence O'Donnell went to go visit with the White House. And this is also when Eric Holder's out there, top cop in the land, saying we need to brainwash people against the Second Amendment, not to mention Benghazi or Fast and Furious. We really have a situation here where NBC could perhaps be operating as an arm of the Obama administration to push an anti-gun message, which is contradictory to our Bill of Rights and Constitution, it seems to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, we can dance around these issues for as long as we like until the until it's time to pay the piper, and if we don't have the money to pay the piper, the music stops and so does the dance. And I think what we're being confronted with may be far more dangerous than anything that anybody has discussed. And if you don't mind, I'll discuss it with you.
You know what? Let's go there in 1 second. I want to wrap this up because you mentioned Jason Whitlock, and I cut you off. I wanted to get your thoughts, and let me quote this guy. And we'll move right over to paying the piper. We'll pick it up right there. But Jason Whitlock took this a whole other direction. Talk about divide and conquer. Jason Whitlock says, I didn't go as far as I'd like to go because my thoughts on the NRA and America's gun culture. I believe the NRA is the new KKK, and that the arming of so many black youths and loading up our community with drugs and then just having an open shooting gallery is the work of people who obviously don't have our best interests at heart.
Mm-hmm.
So let's wrap it up on that. What are your thoughts hearing this racial division in an issue that I didn't know that had anything to do with the Kansas City Chiefs and Jovan Belcher?
Well, what I would say to Mr. Whitlock is spoken like a true racist who's so stupid he doesn't even know he is one.
And on that
How about
note,
that?
And on that note, we were talking about paying the piper. John,
well,
sometimes I like hearing less, and that sentence pretty much just summed it all up for me.
Well, the thing about it is that I believe that our president is not who he pretends to be. I don't know if his birth certificate is legitimate or not, but I do know that CARE, the Council on Arab Islamic Relations, Hamas, and the Muslim Brotherhood have all visited the White House on dozens of occasions. It does not escape my notice that he wants to be sworn in privately with no access by the press, and the press is pressuring him to do so. FEMA has graduated. 241 was the number that I saw of their new FEMA Corps, the cadets, which, of course, a conspiracy theorist could say, oh, man, that's the new Hitler Youth. Well, maybe it is and maybe it isn't. I don't think so, but maybe. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But I believe that when you look, Brian, is it possible to not get one vote for Mitt Romney in all of these precincts? No. Did anyone hear any outrage over the media, over the military ballots being burned up in a plane crash and the new ballots arriving a day late for the election? No. Did anyone hear of any problems in the northeast of the United States where Tropical Storm Sandy tore everything up, and it's terrible. We can touch on that. I was in New York last week. I can tell you a few things about it that are very disturbing.
Absolutely.
No outrage at all. Did Barack Obama say that he wanted a civilian police force or military force equally armed and equally trained to our regular military? Yes. Is suicide now the number one injury-induced cause of death? Yes. Are 25 soldiers committing suicide for every one that is lost in combat? That's the statistic that I read. And now you combine this with all this other stuff going out, just beaming out all over the place about racism. Racism. If something goes wrong, it must be because the white man is once again trying to keep the black man down. And I believe that we are being goaded into a race war. Now, I'm not saying that this is an inevitability, but I'm saying that California had their checks bounce. Remember that back in I think it's happened a couple of times.
Yeah, San Bernardino, and you have Stockton and a couple of other places, along with Detroit, who's asking for a quid pro quo payback right now, yes.
Well, that's right. We voted you in. Now bail us out.
Yeah.
Now, you may have your Obama phone, but the question is, who are you going to call when your government check is no good? We are borrowing 46 cents of every dollar we spend. And this idiot of a chairman goes out into public and says, well, we've got to have the rich, the top earners pay a little more. If the entire top 1% or 2% paid everything they had, it wouldn't put a dent in this debt. It is over 16 with 12 zeros to the right of it, and then the decimal point. I mean, these numbers are unbelievable. What's his trump card? Racial unrest. I do not believe that this man likes this country at all. I do not believe he likes American culture. We know he was surrounded by communists and radicals. We know his friends were communists and radicals. Ayers, Bernadine, whatever her name is, I forgot, starts with a D.
Bernadine Dorn.
Dorn. So, I mean, how much evidence do you need before you start going, wait a minute?
Well, you got Frank Marshall
this guy doesn't
Davis.
seem to be all about Mom's apple pie and the star-spangled, the stars and stripes. He doesn't seem, and that whole deal in Benghazi, all these leaked reports about arms going there. I believe D'Souza's correct. And look, I really would like to be wrong on all of this, and I mean that. If peace could come to this country and this republic could be restored to some semblance of what it was when our parents were alive, when my parents were alive. I'm older than you, but hell, you could write racist in India ink across my forehead, along with fool and some other things, if that would ensure that cut it into my forehead, like what was it? Aldo the Apache did in Inglorious Bastards with his knife, cutting swastikas on people's foreheads.
Yeah.
Cut it into my forehead if I thought he'd preserve the Union. But I'm telling you, I'm seeing some things here that are so reckless that when you see the trend is your friend. And when you see a trend of continual assaults against successful people and against anyone who is perceived as having money, particularly if they're Caucasian, I responded to an email I got at Coast to Coast about, they're talking about rich white men who own land. And I sent an email back to her, and in it I wrote, I have a couple of questions for you. When did you become a racist? Obviously you are one because you've mentioned wealthy white men 3 times. What about wealthy black men or wealthy Asian men or wealthy Mexican expats? What about them? Didn't get a response from that. So I think the problem with the liberals is that you cannot argue with irrational people. They will not be cajoled. They will not be persuaded. They will not. And if you show them to be wrong, they will cling to their ideas even harder because they just can't let it go. And I believe that the problem is that they actually hate themselves. Their little faces are always out there, suffused with self-righteousness, an emotion every bit as dangerous as hate, because they're convinced they're right. And if you show them they're wrong, they will cling to it even harder.
Well, you talk about the fact that it feels like escalation. Basically, the race relations are escalating in not a positive way in some areas. Let's think back not too far ago when Spike Lee was tweeting out the address of an elderly couple that had nothing to do with a man named George Zimmerman because let's get him. He hasn't been arrested yet. Let's go get him. And that there was an elderly couple at an address George Zimmerman used to live at that was being harassed and threatened on top of the fact that he hadn't been charged with the crime yet, and it's this mob mentality, John. It feels like
his lawyers are suing NBC for making him into a racist in order to boost their sagging numbers. And it's like, yes, I mean, if you see the pictures that was taken of him by the police car, this guy got his face smashed on the street. If he didn't, it certainly looks like he could have. His nose is broken. It's out of place. He's bleeding, and he looks like, man, I just got beat up and just went through a traumatic experience. He doesn't look like somebody that was looking to shoot somebody. And that's the thing. Rather than make statements, let me just ask a question. Where is most of the murder committed? Okay. Now that we know that, now we know that white people do insane things, such as Charles Whitman. And you can name, white people without a doubt do the most, you get the most, let's use this unfortunate expression, the most bang for your buck with white people. You really do. If you hear about somebody, I've studied forensics off and on over the years just as a hobby and an avocation, and I've gotten aware that I can tell by the 99% of the time, I can tell by what happened to the victim, which group did it, and that's just the plain truth of it. That's the plain truth of it. See, most people do not know that the Mexicans, for example, not the blonde-haired, red-haired, blue-eyed, and green-eyed ones that you see on TV, but the ones that you think of as Mexican, they're dark complected, and they've got jet black hair and they grow beards. And all through school it was like, oh, well, that's a combination of the mestizos. That's the mestizos. Those are the black slaves that came over with the conquistadors that interbred with the Indians. It's like, no, there weren't enough of them. That blood would have disappeared hundreds of years ago. There just wasn't enough of it to go around. So it's like, well, when's the last time you saw an Indian grow a full beard as thick as a chinchilla? How about never? Okay? Let's look at the garbanzo bean. 7,500-year-old seeds are still in existence, and they originate in the Middle East. And the EZ at the end of many, many Mexican names, Lopez, Alvarez, Valdez, pick one. That's an Arab suffix. These people are originally from Morocco and Old Arabia. If you look at their execution techniques, they're almost identical to the ones that you see in the Middle East.
Well, we have
now, this may be a bit of a stretch for some people, but once you continue to examine data, it will lead you to some conclusions. If somebody can disprove that, I'm listening. But in the meantime, I haven't even heard the subject broached.
Well, we have how many tens of thousands of bodies piling up on the southern border, John?
A lot of them. And of course, that's our fault.
Sure, yeah, our fault.
That's our fault because we create the demand, and therefore those people have to suffer. It's almost as though now, and I'm just going to say this, Brian, because you reach a point in your life where either you say it or you don't say it, and you live with the fact that you could have said it, you could have affected somebody, you could have made a difference, but you just didn't. So therefore, that part of your life was a complete waste. Are we to understand that because we're allowed to have firearms, that we are now getting over on another race because we will not allow them to kill us with the ease that they enjoyed when firearms were banned? Is that somebody's idea of leveling the playing field? I mean, does anybody really think that a criminal is going to worry about a gun law when he's on his way to commit murder?
It's the great
equalizer. What kind of thinking is this?
I read a report because we do a sports show too, the Unhappy Hour, and we talked about Tony Dungy saying the gun culture in his locker room, he saw 3 out of 4 people had guns. Now, I didn't read that as, wow, that's horrible. I said, what's wrong with the 1 out of 4 people that don't want to defend themselves and their family?
Well, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, even in the study of martial arts, you are entitled to defend yourself. But my martial arts master, the 3 rules, the 3 steps are, number 1, avoid. Number 2, block. Number 3, attack. Combined with every confrontation is potentially life-threatening. Don't do it. Another one is, do not lose control of your talking. Do not lose control of your temper. Do not lose control of your mind, because that's usually where it starts. Talking first, temper next, now we're crazy. Now the tragedy is liable to happen. So, for this man to shoot his girlfriend and then go and shoot himself in front of his coach and some other people with the organization,
right,
and leave that little girl an orphan, this is somehow your fault if you own a gun, or my fault if I own a gun, or some gun owner, because we're just not responsible enough to give up our guns so that some idiot won't commit an atrocity like this. Idiots are out there. Some people just really want to watch the world burn. Yeah. Not many, but enough to make a difference. And you continue. I mean, look at the robot guy. Looks like the Tron guy. NFL, I will destroy you. You know, that thing. I mean, if there's any kind of a screwed up culture, it would be the NFL. You remember what Stanley Tucci said about football in that old movie, Shall We Dance?
What's that?
We can't say it now. He said, bleep football. And that's kind of where I'm at with it, too. Let me tell you what. I knew a guy, two Dallas Cowboys. They came to my recording studio back in the day when I was in Dallas, Texas. And one of them was Mark Tuanay, and the other one was Nicky Sualua. They came to the studio, and Mark was a great big old guy, you know, and Nicky was kind of quiet. Well, Mark was always, all he had to have was a couple of drinks. If anybody said anything cross to him, the next thing you'd hear is, I'll destroy you. because these people really think, they believe the PR. They believe that they're invincible gladiators and they're paid all this money and blah, blah, blah. So they're buying their own BS. And what's that supposed to do to the mentality? In Mark's case, he decided to overdose on heroin while Nikki sat in the car with him, covered him with a blanket, and was afraid to go to drive him to the hospital, where his life undoubtedly might have been saved at least. No, he just let Mark die in the seat because he didn't want to get in trouble. Now, Mark Tuanay is as Caucasian as I am or you are. Nikki was Polynesian. It's got nothing to do with race. What it has to do with is an intelligence level and the ability to control your emotions. I mean, don't we all sort of need to control our killing instincts? Isn't that the mark of a civilization? And for these people to come out there and make these ridiculous accusations, just like that massacre that occurred up there in Aurora. Oh, haven't heard anything about that. But for a while, we're hearing the same thing that we've heard before. Oh, there was definitely more than one shooter. Definitely more than one shooter. No, the guy left and another guy came in, blah, blah, blah. Oh, nobody's going to do anything to further a gun control agenda. And what'd they do? They used it to further an anti-gun agenda. So we are strapped with a bunch of lying morons who have access to the mass media, which is, for the most part, bought and paid for. And if they don't like what you say enough, they'll just get rid of you. And in 2 weeks, somebody will forget about it. So the Washington madam that was talking to Alex Jones some time ago said, I'm definitely not suicidal. I'm not going to hang myself. Guess where they found her?
Oh.
Hanging. So these are not people to trifle with. There is a huge movement underway. I do not know where it's leading, but I can tell you this. It's not leading anywhere good. Not for people in general. We are headed toward abject slavery, and make no mistake about it. Now, the rest of it is that this current president, I do not believe he's the Antichrist or anything of the sort. However, I do believe that he is a dangerous person who will collapse things to a level that will permit the next Nazis to rise. It's the same thing that got the original Nazis rolling back in the 30s. The Treaty of Versailles stripped them of their money. They were dirt poor. Their wives were prostituting themselves. Businessmen were coming from all over the world because the women were desirable, and the men had to take it because there was no money, there was no work, there was no aid, there was nothing. These stories about people going into a grocery store with a wheelbarrow full of cash and leaving with a tiny bag of groceries is absolutely true. But in the American culture, all you have to do is just flip on the TV or get on your video game or whatever, and you're instantly distracted from it. Or get on your phone. It's just moronic watching how people worship their phones. They don't care. And it's because they have so many distractions in front of them. They don't have time or enough RAM in their brains to handle the real issues that are the real threats that are coming at them relentlessly.
Well, you bring up an interesting point there, because I was talking on my sports show a little bit ago, and we talked about Brady Quinn making some comments about how a lot of people these days, the quarterback of the Chiefs, of course, making some comments about us caring more about our digital lives and our virtual lives than our actual lives. And the distraction of football, it's bread and circuses. That's what I talked with Blake Wally with. I talked with him about that a couple minutes ago. And it really is distract, divide, inflate the currency, crash the economy, and what gets replaced in a flipping a switch, snapping your fingers. What could get replaced overnight if there's, say, I don't know, an EMP, and all of a sudden nothing works, and then 7 days later all the power comes back on, but the whole world is different. I mean, is it possible to think that 2012, December 21st, and the solar cycles and the Mayans knew that we're at about a time of crisis or turmoil? It's not inconceivable to me, John.
Well, that's the thing. These continual contradictions, just going back to that thing I read a while ago from My New Order, contradicts himself constantly, but his contradictions produce the effect of a psychological pincer movement which crushes the best defenses of logic and ordinary morality. Logic and ordinary morality. You know, two people near and dear to me, men in their 20s, went into a convenience store to pay for some gasoline because their debit cards were low, so they're using cash. Person outside there made a demand for them to go and buy some Black and Milds, these $7 a box cigars. When they said, no, can't really do that, they were cursed at, threatened with every imaginable expletive, including references to their color and how they were going to be this and they were going to be that, and it was F this and MF that, and just all this crazy stuff. Now, my view of the world is that should be met with the following response. Boom, boom. But you can't. You just can't do that.
Well, John,
but that's what should happen. No one should have to endure that.
Stop right there for a second, because you look at what happened, and we referenced it earlier in the show, where the guy in the subway, he was absorbing a lot of anger from this person down on the subway, and this guy was absorbing a whole bunch of verbal assault, and what happened next?
Got killed.
A push in front of the subway train, and he was killed right there because nobody got involved in it. Nobody helped that guy out. He was sitting there absorbing unnecessary abuse. And I'm not familiar with all the details. I don't want to make the same mistake President Obama did about the Cambridge Police Department acting stupidly, but it looked like the guy was absorbing a lot of verbal abuse. Nobody stepped in, and then it escalated to violence. Nobody helped out. That's the direction that some things are starting to devolve into. I think you're onto something there.
Well, and it gets worse. Let's talk about some of the actors. You mentioned the so-called leaders of the black community. That would be Jesse Jackson, who his biggest claim to fame was wearing the blood-stained shirt of Martin Luther King around for 3 or 4 days, praying that he would be able to take his place. He's no leader. Al Sharpton's no leader. Remember Tarana Brawley and all that deal about being assaulted by a white man? It turned out to be a total fabrication. Now you've got Samuel L. Jackson, one of the worst actors on earth, followed by Danny Glover, followed by Morgan Freeman, followed by Jamie Foxx. Who do these people think made them the multimillionaires that they are? And yet, Jamie Foxx is starring in a new movie by Quentin Tarantino called Durango. And one of the lines in it is, killing white folks and being paid for it, what's not to love? Now, you tell me we're not being goaded into an anti-white attitude that could result in some serious conflicts. Those people in Detroit, the last number I heard on the population up there is something like 800,000. That's it. That place has fallen apart. They want to be bailed out.
Quid pro quo.
The poor people that no one has helped, their own leaders have allowed them to squander almost 50 years since the 1964 Civil Rights Act. What do we have now? Gangs, rap, talking, all the way back to, what was it, Ice-T that did Cop Killer? Do people think that this is just going to burn out and everybody's going to forget about it? Playing that stuff where little kids hear it from the time that they're infants all the way up into their teens. You look at pictures of Trayvon Martin, bless his heart. No, nobody likes to see anybody get killed over some stupid thing like that. Really, nobody. I don't give a damn what color they are. The young man's life was lost, thrown away, totally wasted. Now, you see the pictures they presented, it looked like just a nice kid. Well, he was a nice kid before he got sucked into the world that he got sucked into, because the recent photographs of him, he looks sullen, he looks angry, and he looks like he's on the edge.
I watched
when Zimmerman showed up, he beat him up. Well, Zimmerman shot him.
I watched a video where he was street fighting after school, getting caught on a cell phone camera. But all you see is a picture from 3 years ago, next to side by side on a mugshot. And then you hear that NBC's doctoring audio, and this whole false narrative is being presented. Look, I don't know if Zimmerman went a little too out of control, if he was a little too aggressive and confrontational, like your martial arts instructor. You're supposed to avoid, not antagonize. I don't know what happened, and let's go for the trial. But the situation remains. We just want what actually happened. I don't want to lie to get to some false narrative. We just got to address our problems. $16 trillion on a credit card. race relations becoming a problem here in certain quarters, and then you have the whole Middle East going up in fire, and it's like, didn't the same thing happen in World War II? It was kill the Jews, the Muslim Brotherhood's taken over, they're getting attacked, we're being goaded into war with Iran, our southern border is porous, nobody's doing anything about it, domestically we're being fed a whole bunch of propaganda against the Second Amendment, and anybody who has a gun, whether they have a chance to defend themselves or not, it really feels like we're in a strange time, John. It really does.
Well, and who in the hell does the UN think they are to tell us what to do?
No idea.
We need to boot that whole bunch of morons out of here. They're nothing but people that produce guys like Kofi Annan, for example, who was on the take, and his son was too, so they send him over there. We'll send this noble statesman over to talk the Middle East into some sensitivity about their situation and see if they can quell the violence before it erupts. He comes back going, no, can't do anything about it. It's like, so what are they good for? Agenda 21? What are they good for? The Uniform Treaty that effectively puts our laws under their control.
Yeah.
I would urge everyone to look into Agenda 21. It's not what it appears to be. Oh, sustainable development. No, what it means is little concrete cubicles for all. Michael Bloomberg, New York City, is already talking about living spaces for people being between 150 and 350 square feet.
It's unreal.
You know? I mean, who are these people?
Well, and talk about this for a second. You mentioned being up in New York, going and kind of seeing some of Hurricane Sandy stuff. Let's talk about who these people are. Be our on-the-scene reporter. What are you seeing over there in the Northeast? How many months after Hurricane Sandy?
Well, I can tell you that I got a call from a gal on Coast to Coast AM. Let's see, when I got back last week. So yeah, weekend before last, and she said, "Listen, I see stuff. We went through Irene. And that was a real hurricane. This thing was nothing like Irene. This thing was vicious. It was absolutely ridiculous." She said foundations that had been sunk into the ground for 50 years were pulled, concrete, steel and all, right out of their moorings and tossed over yonder, as we'd say in the South. And she says, it really makes me think that something extraordinary was used to provoke that storm. I said, like what? Like HARP or something? She said, something, because this is not normal. She also said that FEMA was useless, the Red Cross was useless, and that the biggest contributors to any kind of relief were other citizens and neighbors and people from New York City and people from all over the country sending stuff, sending water, sending batteries, sending blankets, sending food, whatever they thought they might need, toilet paper, everything. I mean, these people are struggling just to satisfy their primitive needs. Eating, drinking, evacuating their systems, sleeping, and not freezing. And at least they haven't been slammed with a hard winter storm, but they still got snow. First they have a tropical storm, then they got snow. Answer your question, the question that you might have that you didn't actually ask. Where was FEMA? Nowheresville, that's where. People need to understand, if you rely on the federal government to save you, you're going to die. And you're on your own. And you better know that's right.
That's the difference between self-reliance and a big brother cradle-to-grave nanny state where we give away all our personal freedoms, we're no longer able to protect and defend ourselves, and then there's nobody either willing or able to jump in and help us with those basic elements of life. I wanted to bring this up, too, because I watch a show, Doomsday Preppers. I don't know if you've seen it. I think it's National Geographic Channel.
Seen it a couple of times.
Yeah, it gives me a few good ideas from time to time, and they like to romanticize and dramatize some of the crazy aspects of things. But they had a guy who had portable Geiger counters, and I got to tell you, John, I thought to myself watching this yesterday, it was DVR'd from a week ago, I said, oh yeah, John always talks about self-reliance and these types of things, and I just wanted to give you a chance to talk about your website. You have caravantomidnight.com, and you have a bunch of handheld portable Geiger counters so you can identify when a dirty bomb may have occurred, different safe levels of food, and it got me thinking last night. I figured I wanted to make sure you had a chance to explain that because you run that site, and I still need to get something off of it myself.
Well, I appreciate your bringing that up. Yeah, it was so many people come on and just shamelessly hawk their wares. It's like this is really more of a this is really for me just more of a public service. All we do with anything that's left over is turn it into more product. But Japan just experienced a 7.4 up in northeastern Japan. TEPCO says no problem. No radiation levels have been noticed as being different from normal. Oh, really? Well, else would we expect them to say, number one? And normal is it'll be 10 years before they can even take the lid off of number 4 to surveil the damage. They're not going anywhere near that thing. It's very, very hot. Here's something else. The Canadians, 3 weeks ago, sent back a shipping container full of housewares that had been made with radioactive steel.
Oh.
So this is not just dirty bomb stuff. This stuff is everywhere. It's in building supplies. It's in automobiles. It's in. It's not necessarily enough to cause harm, but maybe it just depends. And I assure you that if they had found any of these products that contained a radioactive ionizing radiation to the level that it would be dangerous for a person, they're not going to say anything about it. What would that do to the economy? It was just like Ford. Remember when back in the day when they had a wire that ran through the headliner, and when it shorted out, it would rain molten, it would turn red hot, and then start burning the headliner material, and it would rain molten. I like Fords, by the way. It would rain molten
I can tell.
plastic down on the children or whomever. Well, they decided, it was either this case or another one similar to it, that it would be less expensive to pay off the lawsuits than it would be to change the defect.
Oh, that sounds like a John Grisham book. I've seen that and read that in John Grisham so many times.
Well, it's true. That's just how they are. So with Caravan to Midnight, there are some links that are interesting. Some of them are quite dated now. But there are some water filtration stuff that will effectively remove everything pretty much except tritium, because once that stuff's in the water, forget it. The Canadians are having a little bit of a problem with that, but this part of the North American continent is not. But Central Texas, for example, the guy says, yeah, when it hits a 6, I turn away from it. It's like a 6? There's so much radium in the water down there that it was making the pipes radioactive. So I was ordering tea from Japan. I have my little morning meditation. I'll drink some nice tea. I've always got English breakfast tea, but real Japanese tea. Let's drink it. Well, I put my Geiger counter over there by it, and it went up to about a 3, and pulled the Geiger counter away, and the level dropped. The indication dropped. I put it back over by the tea, and it went back up. So what does that tell you? It doesn't mean it was grown in sunlight.
That tells me natural flavor. Natural flavor, the ambiguous natural flavor of radiation.
Yeah, it's just this is 2012. So you put whatever you put in your little bug out bag or whatever you may need. It's a little bit like Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome when he shows up and the guy wants to sell him some water, and he holds his Geiger counter next to it and it's all crackling. The guy laughs at it and he goes, no thanks. We could be approaching a situation like that. And as Adolf Hitler himself said, I'm paraphrasing, there's nothing quite like terrorism. Because people, if there's one thing they're really afraid of, it's the possibility they may be killed at any moment. So they'll be able to play this terrorism card for a long time. You can't even define what it is anymore. Domestic terrorism, terroristic threat, a real terrorist. And yet the last 2 or 3 of them that have been arrested, they were all setups. So why are the security services going and setting up these idiots to turn around and bust them?
Well, let's just be sure we don't investigate Benghazi while we're at it. That would just.
Well, no, you certainly wouldn't want to do a thing like that. Look at all the military officers that got fired.
Oh yeah, Petraeus. Sex scandal, of course.
Oh, but the man who was head of the whole fleet over in the Middle East, he was removed. There were about six high-ranking officers they've been relieved of their duties over that whole thing. People will look into it; they'll find out this is true.
Well, John,
anybody that made an attempt to help those people was fired.
And I still want to just get answers on it. Once again, it's like Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin. Just what happened? Can we hash this out and figure out what happened? Who's behind it? Who needs to get punished for it? How we can try to avoid it in the future? I just want to know what's going on. If that were my uncle or my cousin, I have people serving in the military. If they were hung out to dry like that, I would be furious, and we should all be furious because those people are, frankly, doing the job that us Americans don't want to do, serving in the military. They're choosing to do that.
Sailor just recently said that no sailor was present when bin Laden's body was supposedly thrown into the drink.
Ah.
You know, and then Susan Rice comes out there and says, "Well, we didn't mean to lie." It's like, "Well, you did."
John, we've talked
you know,
ourselves into we've talked ourselves into a beautiful little circle here, because when people now are trying to question Susan Rice, what is the main claim thrown against them?
Oh, racist.
Of
You've
course.
got to be a racist.
Yes. Don't worry about Condoleezza Rice. Don't worry about Colin Powell and the legitimate attacks that they took for perhaps faulty or misleading information. But this one is now racist for some reason.
Well, you know, that's the one that nobody wants to be called, because everybody wants to be fair and everybody wants to think of themselves as colorblind and cutting every person a slack. Here's the thing. My opinion is that Martin Luther King, and he had his moments of philandering. So what? You know, he's a powerful guy. These things happen. Or as my mother might have said, in fact did say, "Oh, for God's sakes, what man hasn't?" she was being a little bit over the top, but comes close in the broad strokes. Martin Luther King is probably not only turning over in his grave, he's probably rotating in his grave, because now all he wanted, according to what he said, was that for his people to be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And when you look at the rejection that people like Herman Cain got from the black community, like Bill Cosby, who took Tavis Smiley to task over the 50% dropout rate, and then says hello after 30 seconds of Tavis just sitting there, they are being judged by the content of their character. And when a man who has a career decides to shoot his girlfriend and then himself in front of the people who helped him become who he is, what is the nature of the content of that character? It's no different than any other murderer. Color has nothing to do with it. I mean, you can't have it both ways. Like people, they want to say I believe in the Bible. I'm a Christian. Well, I don't like that part of it, though. It's like, no. You can't just believe in the parts that agree with you. You take it all, or you take none of it. But let's shift into gay marriage. I know some gay people. I like them. I don't know one of them who wants to get married. But maybe those are just the people that I know. Obviously, some people do, because they're trying at it real hard. But it's like, wait a minute. If you're a separate group, and you say we're separate, but we want to be absorbed into the mainstream, you're doing two things. You're acknowledging that the mainstream looks at you as different, and you look at yourselves as different. So what does this mean? We have to throw aside our customs, throw aside our traditions, and rewrite our Holy Scripture so that you'll feel better about yourself. Get a lawyer and make an agreement. That's all you need. Do not impose your deal on everybody. We will not mess with you. Do what you want. Live a happy life. Fine. But don't expect us to just decide that we're going to turn away from things that we have held to be things of integrity, things that are good, to accommodate you.
Oh, and it's a season right now to start banning Christmas if somebody doesn't like it. And it's like, someone sent a Facebook message out and said, hey, please wish me a Merry Christmas, wish me a Happy Yom Kippur, wish me a festive Kwanzaa, wish me any sort of Yuletide greeting that you wish, but don't tell me I can't say it to somebody else.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was getting my haircuts last Christmas, and a guy objected to the Christmas music. And the guy who was cutting my hair said, tell him forget about it. It's seasonal music, and he can deal with it. And I said, and the woman came back, I don't know, we should do that. He's really not happy. And my guy said, tell you what, tell him go somewhere else if the music makes him that unhappy. It's Christmas time. It's seasonal music. We're playing it. Period. And that's the stance that should be taken. You hold on to your Christmas. It doesn't matter if Jesus was born in October, or it doesn't matter if he was born in May. We celebrate Christmas on the 25th. Stop apologizing for your Christianity. Stop apologizing for being a Jew. Stop apologizing to these freaks that are so miserable that they want you to be miserable like they are, that people who have no idea they can ever achieve anything of significance, and therefore they must drag you down to their level because they know they will never reach your level. Fight for it. Fight for your Christianity. Fight for Christmas. Fight for those things that you think have sustained the civilization, not those things that have traditionally and historically destroyed civilizations. Let us remember, every civilization has been destroyed by one thing: the barbarians, every time. And that happened because of apathy. Too soft, have sat in the good chair for too long, and don't even know what it's like to stand on your hind legs, speak and act like a real man, like a real woman. There, here endeth the speech and the rant.
Well, there's the phrase that says, never argue with an idiot. They'll drag you down to their level and beat you with experience.
Well, yeah, there's another one I like too in that same vein, is never be observed arguing with an idiot. The observer may not be able to tell the difference. I like that one.
Yeah, well, it reminds me a lot of also the Alexander Tytler quote, from freedom to spiritual faith, great freedom, apathy, dependence, that whole cycle. And really, we're at the dependent stage right now. And you've kind of addressed a very tumultuous situation where a lot of people, whether it's in the path of a hurricane, whether it's in a neighborhood situation where certain people are trying to light little brush fires in a bad way and kind of provoke worse things to happen, whether it's the Muslim Brotherhood, it doesn't matter, local or national or global. We're in a spot right now where it seems like a good idea to get prepared, and we're only a couple weeks away from December 21st, 2012, John. We only have a few minutes left, but I wanted to ask you two questions. One would be, what are your plans on December 21st, 2012? And what is your whole understanding of what you've been able to absorb over the past few years, at least hearing people talk about 2012? What do you think we're supposed to be taking away from these times right now, a couple weeks away from December 21st?
Well, is that a very eloquent way of asking what do I think is going to happen on 12/21?
Shotgun out the back door, John.
Not a damn thing, except maybe some heavy drinking.
Yeah, and then you're on.
No, I don't think anything's going to happen. If you adjust for the leap year that came along, they couldn't have. Oh, maybe they had time. Maybe they had some sort of a window. They could look into the future and they could see when the leap year was going to be enacted. Well, 2012 probably happened 5 or 6 years ago. At least. So I'm not holding my breath. Now, that said, I would submit to you that enough people are jacked up about it to cause something to happen, even if nothing was going to happen. So, there may be a little spike here and there, but I don't think the end of the Mayan calendar signals the end of the world. Again, I refer to Scripture. The day of the Lord shall come as a thief in the night. You're not going to know. You're not going to know when it's coming or what it's going to be. Oh, solar flare, Nibiru. Oh, it's HARP. Oh, it's the space aliens. It's like, when one of them shows up, I'll deal with it then,
If Eric Holder doesn't have his way and you're still able to defend yourself.
And, I'm going to be sitting in the chair on the 22nd. That'll be Saturday.
What are your plans for Saturday? Let's talk about that. What are your plans going to be for the day after December 21st on Coast to Coast, and any cool shows, good guests coming up in between now and then?
Oh, I don't know, man. As it is, I do not. These conversations that I have with people, sometimes they take such different directions, which is, by design to some degree, that I've taken to not even promoting the upcoming show, because I think some people may decide, well, he's going to talk about. We had a guy on there who was going to talk about the prison factory. The big prison system, and it turned into an entirely different thing that was more of an emotional thing than a nuts and bolts. This is how much money the state makes with their prisons, and this X number of people are put in jail, and they're innocent, and those innocent people, they generate this much revenue. No, it wasn't like that at all. So I can tell you that some of the ones that are really disappointed that the world didn't come to an end, I'll spank them gently and lovingly, but I will spank them. But the thing is I don't think that the vast majority of people want the end to come. I think they want the beginning to come. I think they want the enlightenment to come. I think they want the evolution to come. I think they want the higher thoughts and the higher feelings I think they want that to come. They want to change. They see the civilizations, or let's not even call them civilizations. They are, but let's call them societies. They see what's happening to them. They see them deteriorating, and they're hoping that some great mystical external force will deliver the human race from this, where there is no more racism, there is no more violence. It's just like Ronald Reagan said. You know, how quickly we would figure out that we have a lot in common if we were attacked from outer space, for example. I mean, I'm heavily paraphrasing, but that was the gist. You know, we'd figure out pretty quick when we were all confronted with a destruction that we could get along really well.
Well, of course, there's a lot of people, especially in the Coast realm, that say, well, with Project Bluebeam, around a time like December 21st, and it sure seems like the world powers that be are trying to consolidate power and really clamp down on the people, limit freedoms, and turn this into an Orwellian nightmare. Sure seems like if anyone wanted to try something like that, December 21st might not be a bad time to try something really bad if you had cool technology.
Well, and it could very well be that I'm diametrically opposed to, in my opinion, of what's coming. It could be that someone is out there or some group is out there going, 12/21's coming. Let's not disappoint them. I think everybody knows what a false flag is. How many people committed suicide when cousin Orson Welles decided to do his War of the Worlds broadcast? People really thought this. They were fleeing their homes. Some of them jumped out the window, committed suicide over it. So,
well, then there was
I would just say to everybody, steady your minds. Just steady your mind and hold on tight to your faith, because in the future, those whose faith is the strongest will prevail, for better or worse, for good or for evil. And for you, Brian, let us always remember, as Voltaire said, it is dangerous to be right when the government is wrong.
Absolutely, John. Telling truth becomes a revolutionary act in a time of unanimous deceit. And absolutely. John, it's always good catching up with you. I know you don't have anything necessarily planned for the show. You like to kind of let it unfold in front of you, which is what most good conversations will do with time anyway, and that's why we like having you back on here so consistently. So let me just mention for everybody once again your website so that they can go take a look at it one more time. Just give them the real quick overview. Let them know where they can find more about you, obviously, and to check you out on Coast to Coast AM. I really like that. It used to be called Streamlink, and now it's the Insider, where you get 3 years of the programs, no commercials, and you can have it downloaded to your desktop. It's such a great product. So can you just let everyone know one more time about your website and where they can find you online and connect with you in between shows?
Indeed, it is, and thank you very much for that, Brian. It's caravantomidnight.com. Just don't use the number 2. Use all letters. Caravantomidnight.com. Water purification devices are there. I called out the best ones, top, middle, or lowest, middle, and top of the range, so that there's one in there for everybody. And there are 2 different kinds of manufacturers of radiation detectors. One's by our friend Vince Mazer up in Colorado. They're more sophisticated, and you can also log the data into your laptop or your desktop computer. And then we have the Radex, the Russian units, that are just perfect size to slip into your pocket when you're looking at building materials, inside, outside air, water, vegetables, fruits, and so forth, anything like that. It's just a good tool to have. It's one of those things that it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and wish you had it.
Absolutely, John.
Yep.
Well, thanks a lot for joining us again. Check out John on Coast to Coast AM, and definitely that Insider is such a great product. And I'm looking forward to your show the day after December 21st. There's going to be a lot of people willing to vent. That would be my guess. A lot of people are willing to weigh in that day, so promises to be a fun show.
Well, if you feel like calling, I'll tell the operators to be on the lookout for your call and to notify me if you call in, and if you don't, I'll totally understand.
I think that sounds like a blast. You've had our good friend Dan Johnson with Panda. He's a friend of mine, went to my school, Bowling Green. He was on your show for about 4 hours one day talking about the NDAA, so maybe I'll have to jump on your show sometime, and what better day than the 22nd, the National Hangover Day.
I totally agree. I believe it will be National Hangover Day.
I like it. I can see the bumper stickers, John. We'll go 50-50. All right, well, hey, thanks a lot for joining us again. We'll talk soon, buddy.
Take care, Brian.
Thanks, John. That is John B. Wells. Always love talking with that man. Always love talking about it, and I mean it without a doubt. You gotta go ahead and go to Coast AM and sign up for that Coast Insider. I'm just a big fan of radio. I'm a big fan of talk radio. I'm a big fan of sports, as you know, and it's such a great product. I listen to John from time to time when I'm trying to get some work done. You know, I'm not up at 3 in the morning a lot of nights. Sometimes I am, but I like being able to have that at my convenience. It's a couple bucks a month. I don't make any commissions off it. I don't care, but it's a good product. I just recommend it. That was John B. Wells, everybody. Check him out. He's always on the Saturday nights of Coast to Coast AM. Check your local AM dial. Check him out online, coasttocoastam.com. I want to leave you with something that I feel is appropriate. This is something we play on our program all the time. It's called Juice Media, Rap News 15. Big Brother is watching. I recommend that you go online and you check it out because John and I were both talking about a dystopian world. We were talking about power and control and some people trying to bring slavery, to bring a loss of liberty and freedom, to infringe, to impose, to just do some evil stuff. You know, you see it in government, you see it in rogue dictators across the world, and some people fear that things are getting out of control very locally, wherever you happen to be. And this is just such a fantastic song if you want to understand the Orwellian nightmare and why you need to kind of push back against all of the things that are contradictory to our Bill of Rights, our Constitution, our founding principles as a nation. It's self-reliance, it's dependence, it's independence, rather, and it's liberty. And you cannot have liberty when you're in a cradle-to-grave nanny state. So I'm going to leave you with this one. And I want to thank you for being with us again. It's been a hell of a ride. It's been quite the experience over the past, I don't know, what are we on, 18, 19 months now? 20 months? Maybe on 20 months. Coming up on 20 months, I believe, of doing the New American Media, doing the radio shows, and I want to thank you. It is because you listen that we keep doing what we're doing. We are growing slowly and steadily by the day. So we just ask that you like our Facebook page. Search The New American Media. Follow us on Twitter at American_media_. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/The New American Media. And check out our homepage, thenewamericanmedia.com. It's all just much like life. Everything is a work in progress, and we do whatever we're able to do this week, and we try to do more next week. And I think that's what all of our major cities, all of our politicians, we need to look in the mirror. We need to step up here. We need to do a little bit better. All of us, individually, we all need to be a little bit more responsible. Try to help those around us a little bit more. Do a little bit more than nothing. I don't think that's unfeasible. I don't think that's a ludicrous request from people to just let's try to take care of ourselves a little bit better personally and in our relationships, whether it's Brady Quinn talking about our virtual lives or digital lives in the wake of the Kansas City shooting, or whether us, contemplating 20 months of an endeavor here, right around the year anniversary of my buddy Sean, who contributed so much to this site, dying in a motorcycle crash on the 5th, December 5th of last year. A musician friend of mine helped with the radio, helped with the website. It's just contemplative. This is a time to think of family, think of what's important, and just realize that we got this. This is a day that will live in infamy, but we can make it a day that, like John said, it is focused on the beginning, that people want this to be the beginning. Let the beginning of getting this right, the beginning of doing a little bit better and steering the ship away from the sand. Because when the ship hits the sand, it might be a bumpy ride for a lot of people. So this is something I think everybody needs to pay attention to. It's Juice Media Rap News 15. Big Brother is watching. Special thanks to John B. Wells from Coast to Coast AM. Special thanks to Blake, the eccentric Wally from Freedomizer Radio. Special thanks to Brandon Odell on Strictly Browns. And for jumping into some other topics as well in a week where gun control jumped into the sports world and allowed us to have a serious conversation in our bread and circus distraction, the distraction that the NFL really is. So let's just all contemplate a little bit more, spend some time with our loved ones, and kind of reevaluate our lives as we make sure we're all aware that bad things can happen if we're just silent and we allow it to happen. That's why we do this radio show. That's why we thank you for being a part of this for so long. We'll be back next week.
Welcome back, netizens, to this newest edition in Juice Media series of rap news journalism with me, Robert Foster. This evening we're actively delving in depth to facts which affect all of us who dwell on this internet. And we've got to give a special welcome to all the ladies and agents from the NSA, ASIO, MI5. Glad you're listening in, because today's show is all about surveillance and how it's spreading from the streets into our modems. As we speak, laws are being tacitly written in to implement ways of controlling the expanse of this internet. To keep us safe, we're told. But from whom? And will this place ever be the same if these plans go through? To find out, we connect with our first guest to comment on the matter. We're live at the Panopticon with General Baxter. General, son, good to have you back again with us. Explain why the state is spying on us.
My fellow Oceanians, as you know, we've always been at war with Eurasia. Or is it East Asia? Either way, it's war and we need division to wage it. But now the proles are connecting online, bypassing these illusory divisions of race, religion, and nationality.
Sounds grand to me.
It's a catastrophe. Centuries of hard work are being undone, profits are vanishing, and it's due to the internet. It's empowering humanity. We need to get this snafu under control rapidly.
How?
Behold the latest weapon in the war of terror. Our greatest invention since 9/11. Guaranteed to keep us free and safe forever. I give you the surveillance state, ladies and generals. Our secret wires log your key style. Monitor every single number on your speed dial. Rewind straight to your position with facial recognition and pinpoint you within 0.03 of a mile. We've put eyes everywhere without consulting you, keeping you safe whether or not you want us to. Soon there'll be no freedoms left for threatening. Then we'll have won the war. Take that, terrorism.
Brilliant. Thank you, General. We now interview our resident guru, Terrence Moonseed, for a different view.
Greetings.
How does this situation look?
I have one word for you, Robert. Double plus on good. The world populace of 7.4 billion are all headed in the direction of Orwellian totalitarian oblivion. My voice is hoarse, yelling about stellar winds, cold chilling them and trap wire weaving through the world wide web we all dwelling in. Face it, the all-seeing eyes in all of our Facebooks like a virus, and in these iPhones with Siri, or should I say Iris. Next in line is RFID devices and mind chips triggered by chemtrails the plague spray the sky with. This time it's too far. Check out the base they're building in Utah, where they'll be storing all your data for over a century. It's FUBAR. And under the outback is an entire tunnel of wires, an echelon base called Pine Gap to hijack our mother Gaia.
Hey, maybe your mother's gayer.
Boo-hoo. Why didn't you just kill yourself like most of your troops do?
That's it. Now you're on the cast iron list.
Hang on, General. Why weren't we informed about this?
Sorry we didn't tell you about our grand plan before. It was meant to be a surprise, under wraps in a store. But some spoil sports had to go and ruin it for all by blowing whistles in spite of the damn law.
Bill, Benny, and Thomas Drake are trailblazers for leaking these tactics.
Hey, civil liberty activists, this is all legal. Anything we do now actually is.
How did-
You can't question my authority thanks to this.
And that shit's global, people. In Australia, it's now legal for the government to store all SMSs, searches, and emails. Australians, it's taking place under your nose. Unless you wake up, all your data are belong to ASIO.
Come on, everyone knows. You can trust the government now. If you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to worry about.
That might be the case with things that are happening now, because most people agree with most of the laws that are being handed down. But once the Illuminati reveal their agenda for you, this surveillance will enforce laws you no longer consent to. But by then it'll be too late to protest too. And anything you've ever said, typed or browsed can or will be used against you.
I'm confused. So what should we do then?
What should we do? Nothing. This is all an illusion. It's just a ride, a delusion, the Matrix, the Maya deceiving us.
Oh, you hippies really make our job so much easier.
Sorry to interrupt, but we're picking up a signal from beyond the space-time continuum. Quick, switch on the juice channeling portal. Wait, is that George Orwell?
Good day to you.
Wow, what do we owe this honor to?
I tried to warn you noobs, but I see you are actually fools, or else you thought this was an instruction manual.
Yes, so can you advise us? What would you have us do?
An open and universal internet is the most effective tool you have to address the issues that afflict the world at hand. Therefore, protecting it is the most essential task that stands before your generation.
I think I understand.
Hush, man. You must not lose the internet. Heed this mantra. Who controls the internet controls the data. And who controls the data controls the future.
We're losing you.
I leave you with a tool to use. An onion? Don't be simple, Robert. This is but a simile. It stands for Tor.
Tor?
Google it. It's for anonymity. This onion router open network helps considerably against tyranny, but its abilities only work if all you use it consistently. And even if you don't use it, run it, so its force swells.
Thanks, Mr. Orwell.
From now on, call me George Torwell. If we'd had such tools when I wrote this, well, it would have been so much simpler to tell Big Brother to go himself. The mother sucking piece of shit.
Thanks, George Torwell, for manifesting direct from this memory hole of history to impress on us these messages. We're told we need safety, which is precious, yes, but can a society that can enforce all its laws ever progress? Hindsight shows that many figures guilty of thought crime turned out to be luminaries and heroes before their time. But if a surveillance state had reigned then in this form and design, just think of all the progress we may have all been denied? Could lobbies for women's or gay rights have appeared and thrived? Would revolutionary ideals have materialized? Would science have pioneered or even survived if every word had been monitored by thought police and spies? Big Brother brings chilling effects, freezing our collective hopes. He doesn't protect our safety but protects the status quo and threatens this internet, the one channel yet uncontrolled, whose openness we are now called upon to effect and uphold.